Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. I am Olakunle Kasumo. Nigeria and South Africa are two of Africa's most important countries, especially in economic terms, as they both account for about a third of the continent's economic might. But it's not just economics that make both countries crucial for Africa. Their influences on politics and culture in the continent are so far-reaching that it is safe to conclude that the two countries have become indispensable to Africa's development. The Eagle and the Springbok is a book that explores the complex relationship between the two countries and provides biographical profiles of important figures from them. The book was written by Professor Adekeye Adebajo, who is the director of the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. He was also an executive director of the Center for Conflict Resolution in Cape Town for 13 years and served on the United Nations missions in South Africa, Western Sahara, and Iraq. He is the author of Building Peace in West Africa, UN Peacekeeping in Africa, and Thabo Mbeki, Africa's Philosopher King, among others. He joins us to review his book, The Eagle and the Springbok. Enjoy this. Professor Adebajo, nice to have you on Channel's Book Club.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. The Eagle and the Springbok, essays on Nigeria and South Africa. Everybody knows about the relationship Nigeria has with South Africa, but what your book did, or what your book does, is to highlight the details, the complexities of that relationship. What inspired you to write this?
Well, as a Nigerian that has lived in South Africa for 15 years, since 2003, and also as an international relations scholar, I thought it was important to look at what I consider the most indispensable relationship bilaterally in Africa. South Africa and Nigeria account for about a third of Africa's economic might, and Nigeria accounts for 70% of West Africa's economy and South Africa for 60% of Southern Africa's economy. And I'd done a lot of work on these issues for about 2 decades and also lived it, being resident in South Africa. So I thought it was important at least to unpack the dimensions of the relationship.
One of the things that struck me while reading this is it's not just what Nigeria and South Africa share in common and also the differences they have today, but also the history. Nigeria was amalgamated, South Africa was amalgamated by the British. Tell me a bit about the things that caught your attention when it comes to writing about the historical similarities between the two countries.
Thanks. I think what I tried to do was to look at the way that the British influence had actually impacted on both countries. So it's not obvious that both were actually a result of British amalgamations during the Pax Britannica. And there were two particular figures that I highlighted there. Frederick Lugard was, of course, the Nigerian Governor General, who was responsible for the amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914 when the North and South came together. And also Cecil John Rhodes, the British imperialist, who had also made a lot of money from gold and diamonds in South Africa, was in some ways integral as a result of the Anglo-Boer War and its aftermath in South Africa's own amalgamation between the Boer republics and also the English-speaking republics when the black majority were excluded. So I thought it was interesting to look at the similarities and also the contrast of the relationship because, of course, Lord Lugard was amalgamating Nigeria for the administrative convenience of the British, but Cecil Rhodes had a more imperialist vision to take over Southern Africa based around South Africa. So it's good to just look at the similarities and contrasts, and that's what I've tried to do in the book.
What does the, or what do the contrasts tell you? I was trying to discern some of your personal views from these essays, but I noticed that you were more keen on stating the facts, of history and of the present, rather than projecting your own personal views. Is that a correct observation?
Well, I think it depends. I think you have to base your personal views on empirical data and evidence so that you back up arguments based on the facts. I think if you look at some of the biographical essays that I have in the book on Sonny Abacha, on Olusegun Obasanjo, some of my personal views are quite strong on Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as well, and then an essay on Adebayo Adedeji. So my personal views do come through. I think every author has views that need to be expressed. But I think it needs to be based on a historical background so that the reader can also understand, and it's based on solid scholarship.
What stands out the most for you? I'm speaking to somebody who has lived in South Africa since 2003, a professor, and somebody who has written this book, looking at the contrasts and the similarities between South Africa and Nigeria. What stands out for you when one considers the contrasts between the two countries?
Well, I looked at the political, economic, and cultural relationship. Those were the three lenses through which I looked at these countries.